I owned this fool with facts and logic, because facts about backcapping don't care about your feelings about backcapping. No, but in reality, I got to have a conversation with someone on stream the other day that had a very different strategy from my own, and it was actually really interesting hearing their thought process. I don't think we often get to hear from players who are playing Pokemon Unite in a way that is, in our opinion, not good, and actually get to hear why they are doing what they are doing. So let me show you the moment that it happened here on stream. I'll have bits and pieces of our conversation back and forth. They are typing to me. I'm in the middle of a Nitro Stream racing game while I'm responding to them, so we're not going to be able to use a ton of footage from that, but I have all of their responses and their thought process as we talk about backcapping and why they did it here in this final fight, in a game, by the way, that we won. Jake, your resident content cowboy here. Yee-haw. Inside this match, I was playing Sableye, and at the final fight, our Zoroark decided to run away from the fight and backcap. They came into my chat later, and they actually explained what they were doing. First of all, let me talk about what backcapping is and what backcapping is not. Backcapping is not putting a hat on your back. Backcapping in Pokemon Unite is often referred to as the moments right before or right around the Rayquaza fight where an ally runs off, seemingly for no huge value, to try to score on an enemy goal. Oftentimes what happens is that ally gets KO'd, an enemy will find them, or they score, and while they are scoring, the enemy team has an advantage player-wise at the Rayquaza pit, and they win that big fight. So even if they did score 100 points, the enemy team wins a huge fight, takes Rayquaza, and wins. That is what backcapping is. What backcapping is not is when 3 members of the enemy team are down and your team doesn't have any good rip or secure, so someone peels off to try to score really quick and then comes back to Rayquaza. That's not exactly backcapping, even though depending on your opponent's KO timers, it can have similar effects. That's not exactly what we're talking about. More often what we're talking about is someone runs away from Ray right before it starts or as it's going on, they go to score, and because of that, they leave their team in a disadvantageous position around the fight. My overall opinion on backcapping is that it is not good, and what it will often do, almost always, is either put your team in a position to be at a 4v5 without one of their allies. By the way, it's often done by a character that doesn't have the right mobility for it. You'll be at a 4v4 without one of your allies, or you will possibly just send your ally up to quickly get KO'd, and then the enemies come in 4v5 and they beat you, or the enemies don't deal with that player at all. They let Ninetales run up there and score. It doesn't get a lot of value. They beat you in a 4v5. I don't think there are many good reasons to backcap. Here was this player's reason. Their opinion was that playing as Zoroark, they were not actually very good around the Rayquaza fight and would do worse than if they were to run up to a goal and hopefully peel one of their players away. I think this is interesting, and perhaps in a coordinated setting, you could make the argument that this is a possibility, but I think in any other setting, there really isn't a reality where this play brings a lot of value to your team. At best, one of the enemies peels up to you, and then it's still a 4v4. At worst, one of the other many situations happens that puts the Rayquaza fight in a horrible position. If an enemy did not peel up to them in this moment, which Scyther did, if they did not peel up to them, now we have Scyther down in this fight, and we have one less player to fight it. Later in our conversation, this player said that they felt they weren't particularly good in the Ray fight, so they peeled away. My first thought would be, don't play Pokemon that you think you can't win fights with. That would be my first thought. Like, don't pick up a Pokemon if you think you're gonna have a hard time winning fights and participating with your team. That is just, I can't, don't do that. Find a way. Here's the thing, every Pokemon in the game can participate in a big fight. Find the way that your Pokemon does that well. For instance, as we're talking about Zoroark does do that pretty well. Its job is to isolate and try to KO squishier Pokemon on the enemy team, or when some of the bigger enemy Pokemon are in a bad shape, they can jump in and try to get some KOs right there. It is not a frontline Pokemon, for sure. You can't jump in against a Trevenant, Comfey, or something like that and guarantee a KO. That's not what Zoroark does. But assassin type speedster Pokemon like that absolutely have a role in that fight. Again, if you think you're not going to do well in that fight, figure out how that Pokemon actually is supposed to perform in that fight, because the answer isn't run away from the most important moment in a match of Pokemon Unite. To also address this concept that an enemy will peel away to you, this is somewhat possible, and there is an argument that if you could get 2 enemies to move to you, and then your allies knew to take the fight right away, and the enemies were 1 player down, then you are providing value to your team. But it feels like that is requiring a lot from your allies that you can't communicate with, and hoping that the enemy team is foolish enough to make a lot of bad decisions all in a row. One bad decision, sending multiple Pokemon to fight you at goal, but not sending enough Pokemon to fight you at goal so that their team is fully together. And then while they're sending multiple Pokemon back to fight you, they also have to be making another mistake, which is trying to engage in a fight at Rayquaza with only 3 Pokemon, which I think is also unlikely. In general, this feels like a play that is suited for a much more coordinated situation than playing random ranked matches. I just don't think you have that level of coordination in these games without your comms on, basically, to at least let your allies know your thought process. Even if, again, I don't think it is very sound to assume that you making a mistake, backcapping, is going to lead your enemies into making a mistake, over committing to following you, and then proceeding to engage in a bad fight. It's a lot. You're asking a lot from your allies, and you're asking a lot from your enemies. I do think it was really cool to have this conversation, and I don't know if I have it on this video, but later in the talk, he actually does mention that, he understands where I'm coming from, and he'll think about that strategy more and more. I thought it was a really good talk, even though I think things like this can be uncomfortable, because it feels like, for lack of a better term, you're talking to someone who has just a very different theory on things. It's like the video of the scientists talking to the flat earthers, where you have to go, I don't even know where to begin with this. And then the flat earthers are like, NASA lied to you. So you have to figure out where to enter this conversation, and it's uncomfortable to tell someone like, hey, I think that play is not good. Why did you do that? Why are you doing that inside of your game? So I actually think that this player was really cool to have a moment where they talked through what they were doing inside of a match of Pokemon Unite. And even though I walk away still completely disagreeing, in fact, the more that I hear the thought process, the more I recognize that it's very, very flawed. I do think it was really awesome that they sat down and actually were able to have a conversation about it, because, yeah, no one wants to be on stream and hear some idiot with a mustache telling you that you're bad at the game or something like that, which was not my intention. My intention really was to find out why a player might make what I see as unquestionably a bad play. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. I would love to hear from you if you're a player who sees this a lot, or you know people who play like this, or maybe even this is something that you do. I would love to hear your thought process on how this works inside of a match of Pokemon Unite and what you think the best strategy is. Let me know in the comments. Oh, before I go, I forgot that at one moment in the stream I was playing, he did mention, I asked him, I think something along the lines of what happens when this doesn't work or they don't peel back for you. And I'm sure I'll have the video footage here in 1 second. But he said something along the lines of, I then score the 100 and I run back and attempt to steal Ray. And that, I think, is a really important thing to notice, that when looking at this play, when you break it all down and try to figure it out, if it doesn't work out, which it probably won't, you have to hope on a wing and a prayer that you can maybe steal Ray. Anyway, that's just something that popped into my head as I was finishing this out. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I hope you all enjoyed that. I love you. I'll see you next time.